Therefore, while we have time, let us do good to all. I picked this up before coming out, and it's something which has followed me ever since ordination. It was a gift from the Carmelite nuns where I had celebrated my first solemn Mass in a way, and in Wales they wanted me to have this personal reminder. It's personalised, and Mother Superior, Mother Prioress said, there you've got time, and there you've got the world. And this has followed me all round since then, reminding me of precisely the fact that it's running out. This morning, as I was coming back from confession, I actually went through the ruins of the Abbey of Duleek, not round, and paused for a moment looking at time standing still. It's a graveyard which actually is very curious. You have two gates. Through the one, which is less dignified, were allowed to enter after death the Catholics. And in the other one, the proper one, those of the state church. But there they are, soul by soul, or at least bone by bone, beyond and on in another dimension. Now, as I paused, I thought and looked up at the sky. Once that 1 second which severs in two time from eternity is crossed, it makes no difference whether it's 10 billion years or 1 fraction of a second. It's writ large, irreversibly, and nothing can be changed. Time has stood still at that last moment. I've told you before, probably, that funeral that a friend of mine talked about when I was a student in Rome. One of his confreres had to do this painful funeral for 4 or 5 Catholic boys who had a joyride in a stolen car and were going through this new highway somewhere in the States, and somebody was trying to flag them down to warn them that it wasn't safe further on at that speed. It was hardly finished, the highway. On they went regardless, and a few seconds later the whole carload were in eternity. Just this week I picked this up, and my gaze was caught by one Italian poem on something not dissimilar. The title is 20 anni, 20 years of age. This is written by a priest who writes actually quite well, little meditations in verse form. And without translating it, I'll just say in a second what it says. I had in my arms this lad who just turned 20, and as he was expiring in my arms, he said, I've wasted my life, making myself and all around me unhappy. And with that, he went with his baggage of 20 years, writ large, forever and irreversibly with him, to meditate for all time to come, which is not time but eternity, on how he used that 1 fraction of a second that was life on the mappamundi of all eternity. I also picked this up while in my oratory this morning. It's actually quite interesting by chance, for this reason, that just as I was about to come out this morning, somebody rang at the door in a state of distress. Somebody who was very much into prayer and had just come out of Mass, not in our parish, but in another one somewhere else. Actually, it was in the Siena convent in Drogheda. But they received, because they're Dominicans, the Dominican printout for the Sunday. Now, I know that the Redemptorists sometimes have things which are a bit on the brink, but we weren't expecting anything from the Dominican publication, which goes round Ireland also. But there was this paragraph, and the end of it was questionable, and she wanted my opinion on it, and it was actually, as such, it was incorrect, theologically misleading. And as it happens, the thought occurred to me, compared with what we were getting in Italy, on the same level, there's a huge difference now in Ireland. In Ireland, people are getting, now on a constant level now, very short change as regards the teaching they're getting. Now this is just an ordinary publication in Italy, published by, you've heard of maybe Communion and Liberation, CL. It's a university thing, but they're very high powered, but they do things also for ordinary people. And this is on the last things, just one of a long series, but it's bang on! And it goes into everything in clear terms, but nothing is hidden. And it's quite clear, fair play for them, in our day and age, exactly what's in the beyond. Now, how often do we hear that, or see it in print in Ireland? I also picked this up while meditating in a chapel this morning. It's an old book, this one, and actually it's got on it, in Welsh, presented to Olwen M. L. Edwards, gan Ysgol Sul Sion Llanbwllyn, Nadolig 1934. It's 1934, it was a Christmas gift from the Sunday School of Sion and Llanbwllyn to my mother. And do you know what it is? It's the book which, for Protestants, had almost as much influence as the Imitation of Christ had for Catholics. It's John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. Actually, a very good book. It makes one think about what life is about. And as I opened it, it hit me again. Say what you like, and this puts me back in the cemetery of this morning. Whether they were Anglican or Catholic, we must admire these people who nevertheless were not spending their existence Googling and goggling and coming to the end and saying to this question, how did I spend my life? I looked at a screen. No, they actually thought it out. And the whole plethora of literature which came from these ears, say what you like, they're taking seriously what they have. And just this morning now, about to come out, Father Michael was saying something to me which actually is quite interesting. He had noticed how, on the whole, people are very good in church, but you still get this message from looking at some people down there. They want you to finish. They start looking at their watches. Now, do you see the difference? Why should our standards be so low on that level of being able to listen to teaching? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. The devil does not want us to get good teaching, so he gets at the priest through people who are disgruntled. Cut it down, make it short and sweet. We know it all already. How many people come to church with that supernatural vision that from God they might get a word from the sermon? They know it all, and any new bit of information is just point one too much of satiety on truth already known, because only a vessel which is empty can be filled. Now, I just want to finish with one thing. I looked also at something else this morning. I picked up a book which I'd written, I suppose, in my student days in Rome. And I looked at these pages again and I thought to myself, time actually sometimes does stand still. How? There are two ways in which a moment can be caught and relived. You know what they are, don't you? One is the printed page. One picks up sometimes something which a great-grandmother had written. Actually, I have it, I haven't got it with me, it's actually in there, but I've got something that my at least great-grandmother, maybe great-grandmother, wrote when she was being confirmed as an Anglican. It's her prayer book, and it's 1882, and the script is still clear, and time has stood still on that page. The other is this. It's when, actually, in modern terms, you take a snap, a photograph. Photographs, in some way, fossilize a passing second. A smile almost the soul is captured forevermore by a good photographer. And it hit me, a photography of that nature can actually be grace-filled. I remember one time, I had just got to the monastery in Italy, and for some reason, the prior gave me something to read. It was a time when I wasn't quite sure which to go, because I still belonged to Ireland, but this picture was actually so powerful that it tipped the balance. What was it? It was a picture of my next-door neighbour, Frère Dominique, in this position before the altar. His arms were outstretched and he was fully extended, and the Holy Spirit was invoked upon him, and he was about to be ordained a deacon, which he still was at the time. And the thought came to me, all that you have to do is say yes and don't resist the grace which is coming. There are some times when all one has to do is not get in the way. And it was true. By that surrender, all the rest calmly happened. Now, I would leave you with this, my friends. Time, say what you like, is not that long on this Mappa Mundi of eternity. There are some moments which orientate all eternity, e.g., you come into a place of grace, you come onto a page filled with grace, you come into a film or a photo filled with grace, and you are touched. You are touched by the power of the word and also of grace moving the soul. All you have to do, you too, at that point, is not get in the way, e.g., by knowing it all already, and also by not being so full of impulses that you cannot pick up the undertones of the Holy Spirit. I'll leave you with this. Learn again the art of reading and not having to have heavy impulses, because screens do not have easily the same healing effect as a book. Why? The book allows your mind to be free. The screen absorbs and controls your mind, and you haven't got the spaces. Therefore, you cannot, after a word, enter into mode of prayer. You've always been taken over on the psychological level by something leading all the time your thought. So calm down, my friends, because I finished with this, but it's important. Life is poor from being too filled with heavy bombardments. A simple life is richer and more available to those gentle impulses which leave God and not man in control of time.
Loading the camera. What will you see, O eyes as dull as night, yet sharper than the sword in what you stab into the annals of this printed light, that with one peep you for the morrow grab, lest now be lost in then, without a trace of yesterday and yesterday once seen, and perhaps not twice rethought, were not its face observed, conserved, preserved, where it had been. When 36 twinkles of this eye have viewed the unseen, what colours of what dawn will through these clouds have shone? O Master, why is little seen by hominids forlorn, before 'tis seen and must be seen for aye? For that no scrubbing can efface the day. Ego sumare surrexio et vita, qui credit in me, et etiam si mortuus moverit vivet, et omnes qui vivit et credit in me, non morietur in aeternum. De profundis clamavi te Domine, Domine exaudi vocem mea. Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine, et lux perpetua luceat eis. Ego sum resurrectio et vita, qui credit in me, etiam si mortuus fuerit vivet, et omnes qui vivit et credit in me, non morierit